Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. As soon as he threw the game-winning touchdown pass in the final seconds against Oregon, we knew that Bo Nix and Auburn were going to be a problem in 2019. And they certainly were just that, finishing the regular season at 9-3 with huge wins over Texas A&M and Alabama to finish off the season. The question is, what do they have in store for us in 2020? Today we take a look at their schedule as the 12th ranked team in our way too early top 25. And they certainly can be SEC West title contenders in 2020. Gus Malzahn usually has them in that position. And going into this upcoming season, they once again return Bo Nix, who as a true freshman last year played relatively well, all things considered. He had some great moments, like that game against Oregon, and then he had some mediocre moments along the way as well. He's paired up with an elite wide receiver core, Seth Williams, Anthony Schwartz, Eli Stove, and they've got a brand new offensive coordinator in Chad Morris, which could be a good thing, or it could be a very, very bad thing. All remains to be seen. The only thing that is concerning for Auburn is they lose about half of their defense from last year, including Derek Brown, who was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft just a few weeks ago. So we take a look at their schedule here. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. High expectations from Auburn. We've got them ranked at 12th, and I assume when the rankings come out in August, the AP poll will have them around this area, generally, around to the top 15 at least. Opening up the season against Alcorn State shouldn't be an issue for the Tigers. But we'll really get a taste of what Auburn's about. We'll really get a chance to see how good they are in Week 2 when they face off against North Carolina in Atlanta. A North Carolina team that last year was one of the most surprising teams in all of college football. Mack Brown comes out of retirement to take over the Tar Heels, a program that had won 5 games in the previous 2 years combined. He gets them to 6-6 in the regular season, wins their bowl game, and keep in mind that all 6 of those losses came by 1 possession. Many of them by way less than a touchdown. 1-point losses, 3-point losses. North Carolina was so close to having a very, very special season. And I do think they're going to have that special season in 2020 as they return practically everybody from that team last year, including their star quarterback in Sam Howell. So Bo Nix and Sam Howell were both freshman quarterbacks last year. Now they get to meet up in Atlanta in Week 2. Chance to see some major offensive fireworks in this game. Not going to hurt Auburn if they were to lose. Not going to hurt them in their chance of getting to the SEC championship game, but could hurt their chances down the road if they did get there if they're trying to get into the college football playoffs. So this is going to be very telling to see where both Auburn and North Carolina are at very early on in the season. They then jump right into SEC play, going on the road to face John Rice Plumlee and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, a team that almost came into Auburn last year and won, only losing to the Tigers 20-14. It was one of Auburn's more mediocre and subpar performances of last season. So Ole Miss certainly not going to be a team that they want to, overlook. And with back-to-back games, North Carolina and Ole Miss that have very strong offenses is going to test this Auburn defense that lost so much, especially up front along that defensive line. Southern Miss rounds out September, and then they hit the bulk of SEC play. And I will say, guys, all things considered, look, when you play in the SEC, especially in the SEC West, your schedule is going to be relatively tough. And a lot of the times it comes down to how that schedule is formatted. How many breaks do you have in there? How many elite teams do you have to play in a row? Who do you play at home? Who do you play on the road? But all things considered, this is not a bad schedule for Auburn. If we get through September, they get Kentucky at home. A Kentucky team that will have Terry Wilson back at quarterback. Don't have to worry about having Lynn Bowden under center anymore, even though he was fantastic last year. And a team led by Mark Stoops that has very high expectations once again. Some are thinking this could be an upset game, a trap game for Auburn, that the Wildcats might be able to come in here and steal a win on the Plains. That remains to be seen as well. But certainly not a game that Auburn can afford to overlook. And Kentucky, not a team that anybody can take for granted anymore. A long time ago, you could look at Kentucky and say, that's probably going to be a win on our schedule. Can't do that anymore. Not a chance. They then go on the road to Georgia. And these two games right here, at Georgia and Texas A&M, going to be key for Auburn, especially in their quest to try to win the SEC West, to try to stay atop in that race over the course of the season. On the road at Georgia, plain and simple, rivalry game, going to be very, very tough. Jamie Newman comes in for the Bulldogs. Kirby Smart has his team in position once again to win the SEC East and contend for a spot in the college football playoff. And that has kind of become the norm down in Athens now. Those have kind of become the expectations down in Athens. We expect to win the SEC East, hopefully win the SEC Championship. We expect to be in at least a New Year's Six bowl game, but really contending to make the college football playoff. Auburn lost at home to the Bulldogs 21-14 last year, and it's unfortunate that while this team may be better than the team they had last year, they now have to travel to Athens. Very, very difficult place to play. They then get Texas A&M right after that. If Auburn were to lose this game to Georgia, you hope they don't have a hangover when they come back home to face off against the Aggies, a team that the Tigers actually went into College Station and beat last year 28-20, and that was earlier on in the season. And once again, that showed that Auburn was actually going to be a threat in 2019, that they weren't going to be a pushover, that they weren't going to have a subpar season, that, all right, with a win over Oregon, with a win on the road against Texas A&M, forget all this talk about a true freshman quarterback. Forget all this talk about some inexperience. We can win, and we can win now. They stay at home to face off against the Aggies, a team that will once again be in the hunt for the SEC West crown. There are 4 teams that can do that this year, and that's Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Auburn. 4 teams in the SEC West that can compete for the SEC West crown. Those are the 4, and they have to face A&M at home. They get a bye week on October 24th. They're going to play, 7 straight games, I believe? 7 straight games before they get a bye week. Comes at a perfect time. They come out of the bye week on the road at Mississippi State. Auburn annihilated them last year. That was one of their better performances of 2019, beating the Bulldogs 56-23 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. But now, Mississippi State is a team that you really don't know what to expect from this season. Mike Leach is there. They've got an experienced quarterback. Got a KJ Costello coming over from Stanford. Kylan Hill was one of the best running backs in the SEC. He returns. So Mike Leach, known for having very electric offenses, has the pieces in place to have that in year 1 down in Starkville. But once again, you can have that, but in the SEC you have to play defense. Will that defense be in place for Mississippi State to contend just a little bit in 2020? Being at Starkville with those cowbells ringing, going to be very difficult, but I like that Auburn has that bye week right beforehand. So a game to keep your eye on here because I think Mississippi State will upset a few people, and this is one of those games that I will peg as a trap game for Auburn. A game that they will probably be favored in, but a game that they could very well lose. They then get into the month of November, and the first 2 weeks should be relatively easy for Auburn. Home game against Arkansas, a team they have dominated the past few years, as have many teams in the SEC. Then they get UMass in week 2 of November 14th, a game that Auburn should take easy care of. And then, unfortunately, they round out their season with back-to-back games against what are arguably the top 2 teams in the SEC West, LSU and Alabama. So when you look at their schedule, North Carolina, big game here. Big game here, neutral site. You'll get to see what they're made of. Is Auburn legit or not? Back-to-back games at Georgia and A&M. That's a big one. That's kind of your key stretch. And then LSU, Alabama. That's your key stretch. Those are kind of 5 defining games of Auburn's season. 4 of those, of course, being in the SEC within conference play. LSU, Auburn gave them probably one of the toughest tests they had all season. We know LSU went on to win the national championship. We know they have one of the most historic and prolific offenses in college football history last year. But Auburn went into Death Valley and held LSU to just 23 points, only losing 23-20. And it should be noted that the FPI, the Football Power Index, is giving Auburn a 49.7% chance. They basically view this as a 50-50 game. Very early on, of course, but a 50-50 game at home at Jordan-Hare Stadium against the reigning national champions. And with this game being late in the season, I think that actually benefits Auburn quite a bit. LSU has a lot of key pieces to replace. Of course, they lose Joe Burrow, they lose Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they lose so many receivers, they lose defensive stars. Got a lot to replace. And they'll be able to improve on that and build on that every single week up until the second to last game of the season. But I think this benefits Auburn. Home field advantage. If they could almost beat LSU with that team in Death Valley last year, they very well can beat LSU at home this year with what could potentially be a better Auburn team. And then they round out the season at Alabama, as always, the Iron Bowl. A team that Auburn beat last year 48-45, ruined Alabama's college football playoff chances, courtesy of 2 pick sixes. Mac Jones stepping in as quarterback now in replacement of Tua Tagovailoa. But this game at Bryant-Denny Stadium, look, if there's one guy that you never want to face with revenge on his mind, it's Nick Saban. Alabama, when they're a team out with a vengeance, you do not want to face them. Auburn has to go on the road to there this year. It'll be very interesting to see how Alabama plays this year. Life without Tua, life without some elite wide receivers. But of course, that happens just about every year in Tuscaloosa, and they usually bounce back just fine. But this will once again be another competitive game within the Iron Bowl series. The FPI, the Football Power Index, giving Auburn an early record prediction of 9-3. 9-3. Very, very respectable. The exact same record they had last year. But for Auburn fans, that's not enough, especially if they don't beat Alabama. That's not enough. That's not probably going to be enough to get them to a New Year's Six bowl game. It's enough to maybe get them a double-digit win season if they win their bowl, but not enough to get to a New Year's Six. Not going to be good enough to win the SEC. That's what they want. They want to win the SEC West. They want to be competing for championships, and that's just not going to cut it. Gus Malzahn's got to figure something out. But like we've said from many teams in this series, Auburn is just one win away, one upset win, whether it's against Alabama, could be against LSU or Georgia, whoever it may be, one big-time win away in a game maybe where they're not favored of being a team that's middle of the pack SEC West to maybe being SEC West champions. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate all of your support. And check out everything down in the description below for some exclusive college football news, content, and offers that you do not want to miss. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.